Morning, people. So yesterday was supposed to be a rest day for me after the march at the weekend, but then Suella Braverman went full far right talking about how asylum seekers are an existential threat to the West, and so I had to deal with that. And today was then supposed to be the rest day, but then BBC Belfast called me up and asked me to debate Suella Braverman's policies with a professor of politics. Oh, and just to give you a flavour in advance of the sort of person that Professor Eric Kaufmann is, here he is saying that Theresa May, Theresa Go Home Vans, Windrush, Hard Brexit, Scrap the Human Rights Act May, isn't conservative enough. Now, while a lot of it did cover stuff that you've already seen in my last video, some of the stuff that Professor Eric Kaufmann was saying just left me speechless.
I think the one thing that's missing from the conversation is the extent to which the UK and the West is responsible for the problems that those people are fleeing. We sell the weapons to Saudi Arabia, which are being used to bomb hospitals and schools. We make about 10 times more money selling the weapons that are being used to utterly destroy Yemen than we actually give in foreign aid to Yemen. We are the reason why the gap between our economy and theirs are so big, which then creates the pull for them to want to come here. And yet we then blame them for it and pull up the drawbridge. It's utterly backwards thinking.
Would you agree on that point, Eric, if the UK has a moral responsibility to people from countries where the actions of the UK in terms of military sales and the rest have absolutely devastated those countries?
Well, I wouldn't agree with that assessment at all. I think essentially the UK is irrelevant for the flow of these refugees to Britain or Europe or anywhere. These are domestic conflicts, typically ethnic, sometimes religious conflicts, and they may involve some local powers like Saudi Arabia and Iran and Russia and so on. But the idea that somehow Britain is responsible for that, I think, is ridiculous. I mean, yes, there are arms sales. There's a global arms market, but that's, beside the point. There'd be arms sales from anywhere else. I don't think that should factor into it at all. No, I mean, I do think, however, yeah, go ahead.
If I sell someone a gun knowing they're going to kill another person, you don't think I bear some moral responsibility for the fact that they kill that person?
I think there is an international arms market. Britain has a small share of that market. Whether Britain was in it or not would have absolutely no. I don't think that that's any kind of responsibility.
So because somebody else would have sold the gun, I have no responsibility.
No, I really don't. I mean, I think that's really a stretch. I mean, I think that,
Really?
Britain does give foreign aid to other countries.
It's the utter moral depravity for me, because that argument is no different than saying, that woman's walking through a dangerous neighborhood. If I don't attack her, somebody else will, so I may as well. Do you see how messed up that is? Because we are talking about UK-made bombs being used to blow the shit out of hospitals and schools in Yemen. And for the record, the Greens, the Lib Dems and Labour have all had solid policies to not sell weapons to Saudi Arabia since 2015. So if you choose to vote Tory, know what you are doing. But here's how the debate ended.
I mean, the refugee flows are essentially only aiming at wealthy Western countries. Those are desirable places to live. I understand that. I don't blame them for that. I do exactly the same thing. But I think Britain has to look out for its self-interest, which means, yes, it's got to take some refugees, but there's going to be a numerical limit to that. Whether that's too high or too low is for the government to determine. But I just think this idea of some kind of responsibility, no, I'm sorry. I think that's a concoction.
Sorry, as Patrick Hargan just mentioned, the majority of refugees end up in either displaced within their own countries or in neighbouring countries which are statistically poorer. So we're not taking the lion's share. We're not even taking the lion's share within Europe. France takes far more. Germany takes far more. Turkey takes way, way more than all of that. So we're not being overburdened compared to the global issue.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, most refugees move locally or they're internally displaced. That's always been the case. But in terms of countries that are far from this sort of the locality where the conflict has occurred, there's no question that the West takes the lion's share. And in fact, if you look at north-south migration, I mean, the share of people who no longer live in their home country and have moved to a Western country has increased substantially since 1990. So there's been a south to north migration flow to the West that has not occurred in other rich societies like East Asia. And so I think there is no question that the West has been more willing to take people than other parts of the world, given its location.
Final comment, if I may. Go ahead.
Well, the West, specifically America and the UK, were the people that decided to go around the world colonizing countries, getting them to speak English. So, of course, the places where English is the first language would be the most attractive destination for people whose second language is English.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. That is Femi Olawale, who writes for The Independent, and Professor Eric Kaufmann.
Sometimes the lack of moral self-awareness on the right, it's just, it breaks me. I need a rest. I'm Femi. This has been F Politics, just trying to make sure that politics doesn't F you. Have a great week.